We're gonna end the morning with a case study talking about Goodlife clothing, and particularly the ways. Two things that I wanted to explore with Jesse Miller, who's the head of growth for Goodlife clothing, are two key concepts that came out when I was interviewing him a couple of times now, which is the ways in which they're using physical retail as a customer acquisition tool, but also the ways in which they're starting to look at apparel through the lens of a CPG marketer. Two interesting concepts that I want to explore here. Welcome, Jesse.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yesterday, I had the joy of interviewing someone from a brand to whom I've been loyal for many, many years, and closely aligned with, Walgreens. You, on the other hand, represent a very different brand. I'm going to open this interview in a very unorthodox way. How the hell much did that T-shirt cost?
This is $68.
$68 T-shirt from Goodlife. $68 T-shirt. Just for point of comparison, Goodlife, 68, Goodwill, $2. And that's where I'm coming from. So he's got a bit of a sale. He's got a bit of a sales here. You can move the slides. He's got a bit of a sales pitch, not only to me but to a lot of people. But before we get to that piece, Goodlife has an interesting brand trajectory because you started as a manufacturer exclusive for a retailer, then moved to D2C, then moved back into standalone retail. So tell us a little bit about that trajectory.
Yeah, that's right. So the company was founded in 2014, and for the first 4 years, we were really only growing our relationship with Nordstrom. And our kind of break with Nordstrom actually came when we got in Trunk Club. And of all the brands in Trunk Club, Goodlife ended up being the most successful. And when I say most successful, I mean our Goodlife had the lowest return rate of all brands that were being sent out through the Trunk Clubs. So we were growing that relationship for 4 years. And in 2019, we kind of used the Trunk Club inflection point to launch our DTC side of the business and really start focusing and growing the e-com. And for the first couple of years, our blended CACs were incredibly low. We were seeing that blended CAC south of $10. And what we realized as we started growing the e-com side is so many of those Nordstrom and Trunk Club customers were coming over to us and finding us organically and really helping us grow the DTC side. So that was kind of the last 2 years. And right now, our emphasis and where we're seeing kind of our future going is really starting to grow the brick and mortar retail side of the business from our own branded stores.
Which you have, how many of them do you have now?
We've opened 5. Right now we're sitting at 3.
Now, you went into retail with sort of, I think, understandable D2C expectations, that you would be able to use this platform mainly as a way to enhance LTV, grab your onliners and bring them into retail and get them deeper into the brand, but also retention. But you've evolved quickly and understood retail in a very different way. Talk us through how you're seeing it now as customer acquisition.
Yeah, that's right. So amongst all our retail stores, we're actually seeing 87% of customers that shop with us in store are net new, which is really high. It's way higher than e-com. And before I really even go into that, I want to talk about how we're able to be nimble and how we're able to open so many retail locations because we've never really been capital backed. The only capital we've ever raised as a company was actually from an initial seed round from friends and family now 4 or 5 years ago. And the way we're able to expand into the retail space is partnering with a company called Leap. And Leap's business model is essentially looking at retail operations and being a real estate company. So all of our locations, the leases are negotiated by Leap. They're Leap employees in store. They're technically not Goodlife employees, and they help us build the stores. And a really big advantage for us is that ability to stay nimble. Because Leap has so many brands and such a wide real estate footprint, we're able to open stores within 8 weeks of signing a lease. We do none of the negotiating on the terms, and we're also able to move out of locations pretty quickly and not be on the hook for too much overhead. A good example of that is one of the stores we opened in Austin. It was, mildly successful, but we started to realize that long term it was not going to be sustainable for us. So we were able to open and then leave in about the span of 4 months, and we were only on the hook for a month of rent as we left.
So you could almost treat physical retail like digital.
A little
I mean,
bit,
it's like
yeah.
you have a business model that allows you to do almost testing in the way you would digitally.
That's right. And the ability to test into markets has been key for us.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to be key for us as we continue to grow. Back to the acquisition side, when we're opening stores, one of the things that we start looking at and tracking is, we're very cognizant of the dollars per square foot that we need to make to break even. So basically, we view that as that break even revenue per square foot is our ROAS of 1 as it relates to a digital campaign, right? So if we're getting 87% of customers into that door are net new to the company, and we can convert a good chunk of those to continue shopping online with us, all we really need that revenue to be is the break-even revenue per square foot. That's our ROAS of 1, and if we can get that in each location, we're going to keep growing.
So what are you doing to do that? I mean, so that's the trick. That's the trick for everybody. Is how do we move them on? How do we move them online and get that deeper relationship? What are some of the techniques that you're using?
Yeah, one of the things we're really focusing on, I can skip ahead here, is we've really doubled down and we've reinvested in our communications and our email and our SMS flows. And the way we're breaking it up is we're really starting to look at in-store customers and breaking them out between customers that have not purchased but came in store, they gave us their information. Our associates were able to engage them and get their information. Customers that have shopped in store for the first time, they've not shopped with Goodlife before from a digital space, and then customers that have shopped in store and they have an online account, they have an online experience already, and we're starting to segment those, and the way we're being able to communicate with them after they leave the store from an email and an SMS standpoint has been huge for us to maintain that level of brand trust and communication.
What kind of metrics are you seeing from the people that you're acquiring from retail, and how is their behavior and their LTV different from people you're acquiring digitally?
Yeah, one thing that we've seen from the kind of retail to online, their LTV, even a 6-month window, is double that of our 24-month online-only LTV. So not only are we acquiring customers, but we've been really successful in converting those to online. They're going to keep coming back, and they're going to keep growing their LTV with us. And the other thing we're seeing from those first-time purchasers in store, their first purchase AOV is $25 higher than that of online. So our hero product is that $60 T-shirt. 70% of all revenue comes from those T-shirts. Those in-store purchasers are finding our seasonal selection, our higher unit price items, and they're purchasing those as part of their first purchase as well.
What do you make of that difference between retail acquired versus digitally acquired, and why you're seeing such markedly different behaviors and LTVs from them? Is it a different demo? Is it a different mindset? Do you have any sense of what the why is behind this?
I think it's a combination of all the above. A big piece of it to me is the experiential part of it, and the experiential and the ability for our sales staff, for us to train the staff to talk about what it means to live your good life, how good life can be defined by you. That's one of our mottos. We want to empower people. Our apparel is simple. My good life is different than your good life. We find meaning in different things that bring us joy on a day-to-day basis.
I'm full of shit, by the way, because I'm wearing $100 Allbirds. So I'm shopping the T-shirts at Goodwill, but I'm getting the Allbirds.
Yeah, I can't have it all.
Go ahead.
But yeah, so I think the experiential thing is part of it. From a demo side, I'd say our in-store customer actually skews a little higher in terms of household income, and a lot of that has to do with how we're selecting where our locations are going to be based.
Let's talk about that. So now that you've got that different equation, you're seeing retail differently. How does that change the way you suss out your new locations and strategize where you should be?
There's, when we're starting to look at new locations, there's really 3 criteria that have to be met for us to consider moving into a new city. And the first one is, we don't get a ton of data from Nordstrom, but one really valuable piece of information we have from Nordstrom is we have sell-through rates and we have volume of sales. So that's the first metric, because obviously Nordstrom has a much larger retail footprint than we do. So if we can identify markets where we're doing really well in Nordstrom, we already know there's a brand affinity that's present in that city. So that's number 1 we're looking at. Number 2 we're looking at is just our own e-com data. What percent of our customers live in that city? Are we over-indexing based on that population? And the third thing we found, and one of the things I mentioned, we've opened 5 locations. We have 3. One of our first locations was on Bleecker Street in West Village in New York. And we found that, while the geo was on point, the storefront could be bigger and it could be better. So one thing we've really started investing in, and this goes back to the whole break even per square foot, we're willing to pay up for valuable real estate and go for big corner units that are going to attract foot traffic and drive those sales.
So one of the other pieces that fascinates me is, okay, so you're using it as a customer acquisition tail. They're making the purchase. We know everybody can get their email. It's the browsers and the non-buyers that really interest me, because that conversion of the non-buyers is a process that obviously everybody wants to get the secret sauce for. Tell us, how many of your browsers are your in-store browsers, not buyers? Are you actually converting into digital leads?
Yeah, so one of the valuable things and what makes it so neat working with a company like Leap, like I said, they're not Goodlife employees, they're Leap employees. So Leap has a foundation of up to probably 1,000 retail employees that we can kind of handpick from. So it takes the hiring process out of it, and we can handpick the selection of talent that's going to be able to speak to the brand. I'd already gone past it in the slide, but one of our in-store initiatives is this concept of Goodlife Loop. And Goodlife Loop is the idea that so much apparel and so much fashion ends up in landfills. So we want to encourage customers to send back their Goodlife, and we actually ship it to a plant in the Bronx that turns it into insulation for affordable housing. So ways like that we can engage customers in store and train our staff up on to get that information to start building that brand trust. We've seen between a 15 and 20% information capture rate from non-purchasers in store.
Mm-hmm. And once you have that, go back to what you'd said before. Let's drill a little bit more into it. How you segment those people differently from your purchasers. So tell us a little bit about the ways in which you're segmenting and treating those 2 buckets differently.
Yeah, just like Loop right now is exclusive to stores, we do have some exclusive online offerings that we definitely start communicating with those in-store purchasers and non-purchasers to try to convert them into that digital customer. The example you see here is talking about colors, talking about some styles that we'll offer online, not in stores. A big success for us is going into collaborations. We've collaborated with CVs. We've collaborated with a watch company in London. It's actually the watch I'm wearing now. We've partnered with a lifestyle magazine out in Long Island and really driving interest in products not offered in stores. And then there's a loyalty and a subscription piece too that right now are online only that are going to keep driving that LTV and drive the future purchases.
This model, by the way, raises questions about your media allocation and what you're going to be, how much you're going to be spending driving people to physical retail as opposed to how much you're allocating to e-commerce. Tell us a little bit about what that media plan looks like, and if you're thinking a little differently about media strategy, considering that your retail strategy is different.
As we continue to grow retail, our media strategy and how we're allocating the budget to drive online traffic versus in-store traffic is definitely going to shift a little bit. That being said, a lot of our in-store marketing budget is it's not spent on spending ad dollars. It's spent on growing programs and investing in technology that's going to be able to speak to that person. I think our first kind of big foray into spending actual dollars, we started with Mountain this month, and part of our Mountain strategy is going to be targeting locations where we're opening stores and being able to have a very local feel to that commercial. And then the other piece is, I mentioned the 3 things we're looking for when it comes to going into new markets. Is everything else equal, kind of the tiebreaker, if you will, is going into our ambassador pool that we can kind of activate and drive some of that organic social buzz around our new stores.
So the other piece of this that I want to get into is, and I think you foreshadowed it a little bit with the Loop program, is your feeling that you can take pages from the CPG marketing playbook for this, and that you can start treating apparel as a CPG. What does that mean? It sounds really cool. It's the kind of thing that piques reporters because it makes good headlines. But what does that actually mean? It sounds intriguing.
To us, it means we don't view ourselves as a fashion company. We view ourselves as a CPG company. And when I say that, what I mean is we're not a fashion company because what we make are the basics that you should be able to pick up and put on every day without thinking about it. We want to be a staple of your everyday life. And so what that means is, as a product, it really becomes more of a replenishment than keeping up with styles and keeping up with seasons and just being able to be that part of your everyday life. And we're starting to implement new programs and new products like this subscription that I mentioned, the seasonal boxes that get a little bit more of that, and when I say seasonal, I mean like new colors, not new products, but keeping it fresh and really viewing it as a replanned daily staple. I would say in terms of comps, we're almost more like a Bombas, where we know our lane and we know our product, than like a James Purse or another high fashion brand.
So using recycling on one end to communicate this idea, using the sort of subscription service on the other end. How does this impact then the way in which you go to market? I mean, at the top end, as you're getting in consumers, does it change the way you message them?
It does, yeah, and we definitely have to strike a chord because, like I said, we want to be an everyday staple. We want to be part of your everyday life. That being said, a $60 T-shirt isn't for everybody. Mm-hmm. So being able to thread the line of, being part of, viewing yourself as a CPG while also maintaining that quality and that premium messaging that's going to resonate and kind of, inspire you and get you to adopt that higher price point. A program that we've recently adopted to help kind of drive that conversion and help overcome that initial hurdle is actually a Try Before You Buy program, where we offer up to 8 items for free for a week and don't charge your credit card unless you keep them. You have the option of sending them.
I know it's very early in the program, but how's it going? What are you learning from it?
Really well so far. CACs have decreased. Conversion rate online has increased a lot. And we've definitely seen a younger audience start to adopt that.
Okay. Before we go to questions, key lessons learned from this process. I mean, you've obviously learned some really interesting things about retail and using it differently and thinking about it differently, as well as to some degree about the consumer and how they can be moved on a traditional category like apparel could actually be moved towards a different sensibility. But what have been your key learnings from all of this?
Yeah, I would say, the ability to stay nimble and really focus and hone in on, with your email, with your SMS, with your retargeting ads, who are you trying to communicate with at the right time, and really investing in the tech and the strategy to drive brand resonance and keep your messaging fresh and relevant.
And it's consistent. One of the things I've noticed in almost all the imagery from you guys is it's visually, even without the branding, you sort of know who it's coming from.
Mm-hmm. And that's a key piece of it too.
Any questions for Jesse?
Hi, thank you for those comments. Hasib from Taboola. I'm curious, you talked about the comparison between an online first shopper versus a retail first acquisition and how that latter group has got a much higher lifetime value for you guys. Where are you seeing the subsequent purchases that drive that LTV? Is that back in brick and mortar, or is it still primarily online?
It's a good question. It's about 60-40 online to retail.
And that's largely driven by your SMS and email efforts, or got it.
Yeah, our email metrics when it comes to open rates, click-through rates, conversion rates, targeting that in-store customer are about 2 to 3x that of just our normal batch emails to our list or to somebody that has only bought online.
Got it. Cool. Thank you.
Of course.
Oh, do you raise your? Oh, thank you. I was actually just curious when you just mentioned that with SMS as well as email. But given that your target audience is younger, you're skewing younger, are you finding more success SMS? I know that a lot of people I'm speaking with are sort of focusing there.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of success with SMS, and I think one of the things driving our SMS is we're very, very careful in what SMSs we send. We don't want to be spammy. We don't want to send SMSs that are going to start sounding more promotional and more like a brand is talking to you. We're sending SMSs that are trying to be super relevant and super helpful to the customer. I think a good way that I try to think about it from my perspective is if I'm getting a text from a brand, is it going to help me either view an order? We have a loyalty program where customers can accumulate points. So gentle nudges every now and then that are just a reminder that you have $50 in credit that you can use. Here's a T-shirt. That just launched. So being really careful and strategic with how aggressive we get into SMS has actually, I think, improved that channel for us in terms of performance.
Obviously very personal as well, since you know about them.
I don't often invite our attendees to touch one of the speakers, but the shirt feels pretty damn good if you want to test it out. Jesse, thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you.